of those areas. Has that been undertaken, or is that in process, or where is that up to?
There are many initiatives. Actually, in southern Mexico, you can see the use of indigenous knowledge being applied for ecosystem restoration. And the interesting thing is they're mixing science with local knowledge. So they're actually validating local knowledge through science, and there's some very good examples there. Actually, one of the researchers there published a paper in the ecosystem restoration guidelines that were launched just a couple days ago. You can find it there. And throughout the region, actually, there are initiatives, but it's not institutionalized. It's not brought together, and the regional cooperation is now practically at its weakest point. We have the Central American Commission for Environment and Development, which was one who coordinated all the countries in the area. I think they're down to about 6 staff right now, and there's no funding. Basically, the moment the peace agreements came out in Central America, there was no more interest in the region. So all the donors basically pulled out. And then a lot of the cooperation still exists. It's very project-based, very bilateral project-based, achieving the objectives of the donor organization, but not so much the objectives of the local needs.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who has some questions? Did you sit up to or someone hand out you a microphone? We can take your question.
Jim Barber from Colorado State University. I would certainly concur with Edward that the experience of the Mesoamerican Corridor, which was one of the first such initiatives in developing countries when I was involved in the early days, shows that even massive amounts of project-based funding cannot resolve what are basically intergenerational challenges. But I would do think that some of the interesting things with the creation of sustainable financial mechanisms, such as Costa Rica's Program for Environmental Services, which actually targets land in buffer zone and corridors and underrepresented gaps in the national protected area system through an ecological tax on gasoline and other carbon-based mechanisms, that can help create sustainable flows of finance to help address the types of issues such as fire, such as land degradation, such as increase in industrial agriculture. I'd be interested in hearing from other regions besides Mesoamerica of innovative financial mechanisms along the lines of the fiscal mechanisms mentioned by our speaker, I think Mr. Patterson, of other examples in other regions where we're getting at this issue of creating sustainable financial mechanisms to actually achieve the type of change needed to consolidate corridors over a multi-generational time period.
Sandy, would you like to, David wants to have a response to, I think.
Just to add that, indeed, Costa Rica doubled its forest cover from the mid-90s till now, and a lot of that is due to environmental service. But I would add education. The payment for environmental services does not cover the opportunity cost. And we're seeing it now in northern Costa Rica where forest land is going back to productive land due to pineapple. So the moment you have an increase in price, and now we're seeing our northern part of the country threatened by gas, starting to actually build the road declaring national emergency, and no consultation, no environmental impact assessment. They just open the road, and basically it's the Chinese after the gas that's in there. So these big challenges in northern Guatemala is you can't really compete with the drug issues, because it's not that they're already generating millions of dollars in these cattle farms. It's basically laundering money, and so this type of thing will not be covered by payment for services, even though I believe 100% in those payments.
Sandy, would you like to?
I can speak from a domestic perspective. In South Africa, in the last 5 years, we've seen quite extensive growth in the use of tax incentives in the context of biodiversity conservation. At the moment, there are property tax rebates, reductions, and prohibitions in respect of different forms of protected areas, thereby creating the inducement on landowners to contract their land into these forms of protected areas. And there are also a series of tax incentives, income tax incentives, to try and mitigate some of the costs of landowners who voluntarily undertake conservation measures on their land. There are talks and negotiations to try and extend some of these tax incentives into the realms of transfer duty and estate duty, so that when people leave land on their deed into conservation areas, those taxes will be waived. I guess one thing one has to think about more generally is that where the tax is in fact a sustainable form of financing for protected areas and biodiversity initiatives. Our government is seen wavering in this respect, and one doesn't know what the next government may bring in. We have very many pressing socio-economic realities which need to be financed too. So I guess it's constantly lobbying to ensure that conservation is high on the list of agenda.
Thank you. Elaine, yes.
I just wanted to mention something, maybe just an idea. You were talking about economic financing for protected areas, and I think something that hasn't been well understood is the social capitalism behind protected areas and conservation. And I don't know if that's been quantified or understood. Maybe we need to do more about it, and it can be something that we can invest in social capital that would augment the monetary capital.
That's what I'm dedication and actually empowering the local communities.
Yeah, good point. I'll add to that commentary. There's an initiative in Victoria, Australia called Habitat 141, where it's resourcing its activity through a bank who offsets its loans. So it has a mechanism where purchasing a house, the cost of the house and the various carbon emissions it produced in building the house are offset by the bank. And the bank is actually going out acquiring land within the Habitat Corridor, Habitat 141, and revegetating that particular area. So they're building in incentives into their own economic institutions, which is quite powerful. There's another question. Yes, thank you.
Rob Fowler from, everyone's not working, shall I shout?
Rob Fowler from the Australian Conservation Foundation. I want to just raise the question in terms of the sorts of legal frameworks that Sam and Dan all spoke about the question of mining and petroleum activity. If we're looking, because I didn't see that mentioned in any of the slides today, if we're looking at areas between protected areas that we're trying to establish corridors on, many legal systems give a kind of priority or preference to laws that promote access to land and mining and petroleum activity. And does this, as a result, mean that there is a challenge for sort of long-term sustainability of connectivity corridors if we do not interface with those particular laws?
There was the word minerals on my one slide, which is supposed to refer to the mining industry in the context of resource use. It is a massive challenge, and there's always a battle between the environmental authorities and the mining authorities. Once again, just looking from my domestic perspective, we had incredibly concerning news yesterday that the government has decided to rethink its moratorium on fracking throughout the central of South Africa. There was supposed to be an extensive consultation process with all the stakeholders, including the environmental authorities. What's quite interesting is there's now court action to try and discover what the composition of the body appointed to determine the viability of fracking. That information is not forthcoming. And the comment by our mining authorities that consultation will occur after the event. So it remains a challenge.
Ben, did you wish to add to that?
Yes, no, I just want to ask a question. In relation to the Otay region, I wanted to know a little bit more about the legal framework which governs the connectivity project, and in particular, what precisely does it say, and what effect does the fact that China is not involved, what effect would that have?
Yeah, thanks for this question. I think this question is crucial for the success of the whole that connectivity area. Because all countries, of course, have national legislation in biodiversity conservation and protected areas, and also international obligations created by different conventions, like, for example, the Rare Heritage Convention and videos. But the problem is that there is no clear and agreed region or regional convention, maybe on cooperative actions on biodiversity conservation. And this is the great gap which doesn't allow us to move fastly forward towards this conservation area. However, there are several bilateral agreements between Russia and Kazakhstan and Russia and Mongolia, and also between Kazakhstan and Mongolia. So these bilateral agreements allow to foster cooperation in biodiversity conservation issues, but there is no bilateral, neither convention nor agreement, nothing regarding involving all four countries.
But is that contemplated?
Sorry?
Is it planned to do that?
We are talking about it at least 15 years, because there was an idea of developing so-called Altai Convention, so maybe a convention like Alpine or Carpathian, which is a great tool of cooperative management of natural resources in mountain countries. However, this is still a talk and maybe no political will, and that's why we don't have real support.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the audience? No?
Perhaps we have.
If we have a microphone for you. Thank you.
Yes. Well, I'm not sure how to formulate my question. I think I have so many. My name is Maria Forsberg, and I'm from Sweden, and I'm an environmental lawyer. We have a lot of forests in Sweden, and they are owned by private landowners, but we don't have any plans for managing these forests. We don't have any landscape plans, regional plans, or even requirements for management plans, actually. And this is, of course, a lack in the environmental law, I believe. But my question for you is, you have been addressing the need for planning instrument, land use planning, but what about the legal status of these plannings? What about the property rights? And how do you compensate the landowners if you have this, as in Sweden, many private landowners, and you have maybe a very small financial governmental budget?
We have a number of people putting up their hands wanting to respond to that. So, Edward, if you wanted to make a quick response, and Ben, if you wanted to respond to that too.
Yeah, in the Mesoamerican Ecological Corridor, most of those areas are private lands too. So you have to work with getting the people to understand this, and that is where the environmental services come in. We have problems of rivers drying out now that never dried out throughout the year. And farmers see that. We have problems with certain crops having to be pollinated by hand, and farmers see that. So this is where I see a window of opportunity now, because of climate change. People are actually realizing that they cannot keep on just smashing everything and doing the traditional development. I see this as an opportunity. I don't see actual legislation being able to cover anything, because we say in Spanish, we have the law, we have the trick. And when we see that in Costa Rica, you cannot do land use change in Costa Rica. You're not allowed to do it legally, and it's being done. And they cut the trees and they make big holes with the tractors and bury the trees so nobody sees that they're doing land use change. But if you fly over, you can see it. So legal aspects, I think, won't be the solution. I think the other opportunities are where we have to work.
I agree. I think the legal aspects play an important role. I guess if I refer to the connectivity conservation book by Graham Allboys, one of the key aspects there is actually establishing a collaborative vision for the future. So that vision and that clarity of purpose with the community is really what enables and pushes those components forward. So I think I would be encouraging people here that our first step in connectivity conservation is sitting down with the community and establishing your vision, irrespective of the law. Now I'll have the lawyers talking up on that.
The law is useful too. Because one can create great diversity with the law. It's not only one solution, so one can create a myriad of solutions. You can have very, very strict forms of regulation in respect to certain land. You can have lesser forms of strict regulation in respect to other lands. So you create a series of tiers. Areas of high conservation value of absolute importance. You may need to purchase that outright. Other areas of less importance, but of importance as connectivity corridors between these areas of crucial importance. One can create a diverse set of tools, which don't necessarily include taking away every form of land rights. and leaving certain land rights at first, therefore drawing a distinction between deprivation and expropriation or takings and restrictions. So I think there is great potential and scope for overcoming those hurdles.
As you can see, that's a really powerful question because it strikes all into the debate. So thank you for that. We're running down the clock. We'll have one final question from over the back, and then I'll ask Graham Allboys to wrap up.
Thanks. It's not really a question, but just for your information. My name is Mary Paxton. I'm from UNDP, based in Bangkok. Talking about, earlier we talked about Alpha-Siam ecoregion and connectivity there. And as you know, and Tatiana mentioned, that UNDP has been supporting various countries in the ecoregion for protected area and landscape management. And we are now in the process of developing a project in China, focusing on Altai area. And in the project, we have this element of supporting China's capacity, or also encouraging China to engage in this connectivity discussion in the regional scale. So just for your information, hopefully that will make it easier to get their meaningful participation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, many thanks. Great news, actually.
Okay, on that note, I'd like to invite Graham back up to the podium here to just give a wrap up on the comments that have been and presentations for the day. Thanks, Graham.
I'll be very brief, but I'd just like to reflect, just for a few seconds. In 2008, Barcelona World Conservation Congress, we had a forum, a similar forum, and we talked in inspirational ways about opportunities and the way we could develop. In 2008, WCPA, a few weeks later, ran a workshop in Dhulikhel, Nepal, to help develop a book which can provide management guidance